Hey there, everyone. It's Joe from Ainsley's Gold Silver Standard Insights, brought to you by goldsilverstandard.com and ainsleyBullion.com.au. Today's topic is non-farm payroll and silver big reversal. Now, that's posted on the Ainsley website. I'll put a link below for you to follow along. And of course, we have Chris Tipper here to break down the morning's news. And joining Chris today is Alex Hutchinson from Siltec Precious Metals. So, Chris and Alex, over to you.
Thanks, Joe. Last week ended with a bang on the back of some mixed employment data out of the US. It was a strange situation where we saw the unemployment rate tick up at the same time as a moderate number of new jobs were created, which speaks to changing dynamics in the participation rate and other underlying drivers of the current employment markets. However, silver was the market with the biggest reaction that caught our attention on Friday night. We had a 7% swing in the silver price, which dropped the gold-silver ratio from 85 to 80 very quickly, and got a lot of attention from analysts, highlighting a trend where silver tends to outperform gold in precious metal bull markets. So to dig into these dynamics, we welcome back Alex, who is very well positioned in the industry to give us a lot of unique insight into supply and demand dynamics and why silver tends to outperform in this way. So hi, Alex, and I'm very keen to hear your thoughts on these unfolding silver markets at the moment.
Hello again, Chris. How are you?
Yeah, really good. So let's start by going back a few days. So we'll get to the silver part, but I'd be interested to hear your perspective on that FOMC meeting we had last week, because we did get the rate rise exactly as expected. And there was a bit of chaos in the markets after that, because it seemed like the markets actually took that pretty well. And then Powell came out and spoke to the Fed's decision. And then all of a sudden we saw, the markets really become quite volatile. So I'm interested in that, but also we had the non-farm payrolls number come out on Friday night, which also played into that sort of bigger picture macro story. So what was your sort of perspective on all of that?
So I guess on Thursday, we saw the markets, just looking at the Aussie dollar, because silver and gold follow the Aussie dollar a lot. So just looking at that in particular, on the back of Powell, the market went from 64, within a range of 64.9 and to 60.2.8, so a 2.1 cent swing within about 15 minutes. So it was very chaotic, and gold and silver obviously followed, but it was actually the next night with the non-farm payroll, which quite frankly was a as expected figure. The only thing that was out of place in it was that the unemployment has risen to 3.7%, but really the numbers, the actual job creation numbers were up. So swings and roundabouts, it was pretty good numbers, but silver and gold whiplashed on that particular one, 4.2% and then 7.2% in silver. So silver went from about 19.3 on the day up to 20.9 nearly. So, $1.60 or 7% was the overall market by the end of it. So it was, an insane move from those precious metals.
And I haven't been able to really figure out what was driving that, because I know a lot of the chaos really came from the idea that the number was expected. Oh, I'm sorry, not so much the number. The Fed was sort of expected with that interest rate rise that maybe that's the end of the bigger numbers and then we start to see smaller numbers. So not so much a pivot, but a slowing. But I think the Fed comments then were a little bit more, no, even if we're slowing, we're still going for a long time. So it sort of balances out to being what we were before. But so for gold and silver to respond how they did, it seemed like that was a little bit of new information coming in somewhere there. So I couldn't quite get a handle on what was happening there. But I know demand is part of it. So we've been talking a lot about that on Insights, the demand story going on in the background here. And I noticed in what was written today and what you've been talking about, that there were some mint issues starting to pop up in there also. So can you give us a little bit of background about maybe that part of the story that's coming into play?
So I guess on Friday night with those big swings, if you remember the GameStop and silver squeeze thing that happened back in 2021, that started trending again on Twitter. And so you had some people starting to ask the Mint, what's going on? I mean, I can say that, our delivery times have been pushed out as well with what we do. So I'm well aware of what's going on in the market. It's a fabrication issue at the moment. And the US Mint was asked by a Silver Squeeze Twitter account what's going on. And the Mint has turned around on the same night and said, we can't get it fast enough. There's not enough fabricators. We're certainly asked a lot more at the moment for silver supply from a whole range of people for industrial as well as bar making. So it's possible that those sorts of comments and that sort of trend on Twitter really pushed silver up even further in particular. Because 7%, you don't often see it hitting those numbers past gold, because gold's your safe haven. And with what happened in the non-farm payroll, there was a little bit of hope, I guess, that the Fed will slow further their anticipated 50-point rise in December. Everyone got excited and bought silver, and maybe those comments from the Mint drove it even further, to be honest. But it's definitely what's going on. There's right now, I'm pretty sure there's been articles on COMEX and LBMA vaults being cleaned out. So, much of the muchness, but at the moment, end of September, there was 27,100 tonnes left of silver in the LBMA vaults. That's a 2016 low. So they've really been moved out. The increased India this year, so far up until August, had a demand of about 6,100 tonnes. So put that in perspective for what's in the LBMA vault. One country in 4 years would just clean that vault out. So it's pretty big. So with India, they had 6,100 tonnes of silver imported up until August, so 8 months. And the record imports for them is around 8,100 tonnes. So they're going to absolutely outstrip their record imports, just as one country. And then finally, we have a push right now for clean energy, and clean energy needs copper and silver. So solar panels, I have read, I'm not sure if it's right, but that to increase the efficiency of solar panels right now, they're actually putting back a bit more silver than previously. I think it's gone from 13 grams to 17 grams. And then you've got 5G now being rolled out, and that's all silver conductive as well. So there's a lot more industrial use. There's a lot more countries importing. And then the Mint's has finally, fessed up and said we can't make it fast enough. So the demand is out of control.
And that's there's some big numbers you've mentioned there, and big use cases too that aren't really going away, because some of those demand issues aren't like other demand issues or other supply shocks that we've seen in the economy. These are really not solvable quite the same way. For example, we talk about, China reopens, all of a sudden that clears up a lot of supply issues. This is very different, isn't it? Because it's not the same when you're talking about digging physical metal out of the ground and then...
No, they talk about commodities, and we've spoken about what would be a good investment right now. We've said commodities. Silver is both a commodity and a precious metal. And not only that, silver is the most, it's the most reflective, the most conductive material in the world. So in fact, when you look at conductivity of other metals, gold and copper, they're always referred to on a baseline of silver because it is the most conductive. So you've got this metal that everyone needs for electricity, everyone needs for IT and infrastructure, and then it's a precious metal. So the jumps in it are dramatic.
And that probably leads into my next question, because we talked about it in the news today, or you mentioned that, the gold-silver ratio, because you say like silver has that dual purpose, so that probably plays into a little bit. The gold-silver ratio can actually be quite difficult to understand what's going on, because it sometimes doesn't appear to be responding in the way you would think. You sometimes have situations where there's a bit of economic chaos or things happening in the market where you would expect gold to outperform, and it can be the other way around. So is silver operating as some form of leading indicator here for the precious metal markets? Do we see large drops like that one that we saw at the end of last week? Is that sort of leading to something else? Is there a history where you see a big drop like that in the GSR being correlated with the start of a new bull market in precious metals, for example?
So the number that's always spooked about with the gold and silver market is 30 to 1. So silver to gold is meant to be 30 to 1 ratio in the ground. But at COVID, it got up to, looking at the graph here, 130 to 1. That was the highest ever. It then had a massive drop back to 70, but it never has hit the 30 mark that it hit back in around 2011, which is when silver and gold were really in their precious metal heyday after the GFC. And so a drop like what we've seen may bring it back, maybe the start of bringing it back to that level, who knows? But those sorts of rapid drops where silver gains and gold only gains a little bit is very like it's a normal thing that we see before a bull market. Silver, I don't know if you've ever heard it referred to as this, is called the devil's metal, being that the swings are so much higher and lower on it. So yeah, it may be the case.
And just to clarify there, you're not suggesting that ratio dropping is because gold's falling, because it's not, is it? It's just that silver sort of has that
goes up faster,
and it's almost like a spring reaction, isn't it? That it might have been more compressed during the down periods of time that allow it, when that market turns, it tends to take off. But that's probably a combination, as you mentioned, of the precious metal characteristics, but also the industrial characteristics, I suppose.
That's right. Sorry, a bit of noise in the background of my house. My apologies. Yeah, like it's these bull markets are led by silver and gold both going up, but silver going up faster. And the bear markets are exactly the opposite. So silver will collapse faster than gold. They're different markets.
Yep. All right. Well, once again, it's always fascinating to hear from you and your perspective on all of these things that are going on around us, and particularly interesting at the moment with that silver price, because we'll all be watching that very closely to see if we at the start of that turn, because that would be really quite exciting, because I imagine the predictions from here would be quite substantially higher if this is in fact the start of that long-awaited bull market in precious metals.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what you would think, I imagine.
How many times do you see a bull and a bear market and never pick it? So it's certainly a great indication. And regardless, silver is a commodity right now, just like copper, that is going to be needed. Whether this is a bull or a bear market, there is not enough silver for what we need to do to decarbonize as an economy. So I would, whether it's a commodity or precious metal, the demand's not going away.
Absolutely. So all on board the silver train for now, at least. Thanks again, Alex, and we'll speak to you again, maybe not next week, but the week after.
That'll be it.
Thanks, Alex. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for being on the show once again, Alex and Chris. I'll see you on the next one. And of course, to the audience, I want you to head over to the Discord channel. That's discord.gg/gold. The perfect way to continue the conversation. Alex and Chris will be there for the next 1 or 2 hours after the upload of this video. So head over there, ask your questions, get a response, and tell us your feedback. We really want to hear from you. I always want you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/AinsleyBullion for the wide range of informational videos that we post 5 days a week, including specials and much, much more. And while you're on the internet, head over to goldsilverstandard.com, because that's bringing gold and silver into the digital world. As we say here at the end, balance your wealth in an unbalanced world. Take care, and we'll see you next time.